Earlier today, you had an introduction to what impact investing is all about. And if you think that this is a good way for you to proceed for your business in order to raise money, then there are some things that you need to know and to prepare in advance. One of them is, how do you tell your impact story? But what is it that impact investors want from you? Well, like all investors, the first thing they want to see is that they think that you can produce the type of financial return that would warrant their investment in your business. And secondly, an impact investor will also want to see that your business can generate environmental or social benefits that are actually delivered as part of your overall business operation. So you can understand that you will need to be able to tell a strong business and financial story, but in addition, you're also going to have to tell a strong and convincing impact story. So let's start by looking at what impact is. It causes a bit of confusion sometimes. So let's start with what impact isn't. Impact isn't supporting health or education initiatives in your community, or sponsoring local sports teams or groups, or indeed supporting local conservation initiatives. These aren't impact because they're not an integral part of your business operation. So what is impact? Impact is where benefits are delivered by your business to people or the environment, and that those benefits are directly linked to your core business operation. So you need to build your impact story, but for many people, this might be the first time you've really thought about your business in this way, and it can be daunting. But like with so many things, if you break it down into its constituent parts, it's actually straightforward. Here's a grid that I've designed. It's got 5 columns. And if you can populate these columns in this grid, then actually what you will find you've got are the building blocks for your impact story. So let's start with the first column, beneficiaries. What is a beneficiary? Well, a beneficiary is someone who benefits from your operation. So who benefits as a result of what your business makes or does? Who benefits because of the employment and livelihoods you generate? Who benefits because they supply you? And who benefits because you may provide improved access to things like financial services or markets or information or energy or education? And does the environment benefit from what you do? I always think that it's easier to have a look at an example because it makes it much clearer. So let's take an example of a company that I've made up. It's not a real company, but let's call it ABC Plastics. ABC Plastics recycles plastic bottles to make packaging material. So if we go back to the grid that I showed you just now, I've actually populated the first column. I've come up with 2 basic beneficiaries. The first is the environment, because we're removing what otherwise would be polluting plastic waste. And also I've come up with another set of beneficiaries, and they're the people who collect plastic and sell the plastic bottles to ABC Plastics. They normally come from poor urban households, and actually most of them are women. So the next stage is to think about the problems that those beneficiaries have that your business helps to fix. So bear in mind who your beneficiaries are. If you think about the beneficiaries and identify the problems that you're helping to fix or provide a solution to, that is actually going to give you where your impact lies, because it's the fixing of those problems that is your impact. So bearing that in mind, let's go back to our grid, and actually we can now fill in the next 2 columns. So thinking about the environment, the problem the environment has is that it's getting polluted by the plastic bottles that get discarded and either go to landfill or end up in just in the countryside or in the streets or in the watercourses. So the impact that our business ABC Plastics is delivering is that they're reducing environmental pollution. Similarly, if we look at the people who are collecting and selling the plastic bottles to ABC, their problem is that they actually come from low households with low incomes. So they're poor. And the impact that ABC is delivering is that they're providing increased incomes for poor urban households. So you can see already we've got 3 of our columns populated with information. So let's go on to our 4th column, how to grow impact. Just like any part of your business, an investor is going to want to see that you have a plan to grow your business in the future. And just like your business plan, you need to be able to show that you're going to grow your impact as well. So is there a way that you can refine your operation to increase your impact, or maybe you can increase the reach of your impact to a wider audience? But you're also going to need to set goals and targets for that growth in impact, just like setting financial goals and targets for your business operation. So what might ABC Plastics be able to do to grow their impact? Well, by growing their overall business, they're clearly going to grow their impact. But if they increase their range of products produced, so beyond just the plastic packaging material they're producing at the moment, they can increase their impact even more. They can increase the reduction in environmental pollution by recycling more plastic, which is what they will need to do if they increase their product range. Similarly, they're going to be able to increase their impact in terms of improving household incomes for poor people by increasing the number of collectors that they work with, which again, they're going to need to do if they're going to increase their range of products. So they've worked out how they can increase their impact, but also we can see here they've also managed to turn that into some impact targets. So increasing the amount of plastic recycled by 30% in 2022 and 25% in 2023, and looking to increase the number of collectors they're working with by 20% every year. So that just leaves us our last column, tracking and measuring. Now, just like with your financial performance, investors will need to see that you're tracking and measuring your impact in, performance against the targets that you have set yourself. Now, how you measure your impact will vary depending on the impact that you're actually producing and your particular context. But one thing is for certain, you are definitely going to have to report your impact performance regularly. So you will need to set up a system to report that impact alongside your financial reporting. So let's see how ABC Plastics might do this. Now, tracking the reduction of environmental pollution is easy because all they have to do is track the weight of the plastic they're recycled annually. If they're recycling 100 tons of plastic, then actually that's 100 tons of plastic that is being removed from the environment. So that's very straightforward. Similarly, if they're looking to track the impact that they're having in increasing household incomes, they can do that easily too using their bookkeeping system, because they can track the number of collectors that they're working with, and they can also track the amount of money that they're paying out to those collectors via their bookkeeping. So now we've got our grid, all we have to do is pull it all together. So you take your base grid that you've populated with the 5 columns of information, and now you can set everything out in a very clear and coherent impact story in a separate document. But you must make sure that your impact story in that document is part of your ongoing business plan and reflects what you have in your overall business plan. So we now need to just put together our final document. And while we're doing that, what you need to do is remember 5 key points. Firstly, you must remember that impact must result directly from your company's business operations. You only want to concentrate on 1 or 2 impact challenges, not too many. Investors will want to see that you're focused. You will need to measure and track your impact results regularly and have systems in place to do that. And your impact story and your business plan must complement each other. And the final point is telling your story is one thing, but what you need to make sure of is that your story reflects what you actually do on a day-to-day basis. Thank you. I hope that's been helpful. Hi there. So thank you very much for that. I recorded that because there was a lot to get in, and I didn't want to overrun an introduction to what impact investing. Sorry, I'm renowned for speaking too much. But I'm really happy to see you all here, and I'm very, very happy to take any questions that you have. So please just know if you have any questions. Great. Okay, so I don't seem to have any questions, but I've got questions for you. I seem to be getting some feedback on this.
Sorry, Deb. I think it's from Peter. Peter, would you mind muting? Thank you.
Okay. Oh, that's better. Great. Okay. So I can see lots and lots of people in the group today, which is lovely to see. Have any of you actually developed an impact story for your business yet? If so, I'd love to hear how you got on. Oh, okay. Well, while you're thinking about that, I just had a very, very interesting question, which just buzzed. Right. It was about, it's from Armin Bauer with regard to social impact. Can you please clarify that impact is about intent and not just safeguards? Absolutely correct. So what do we mean by that? So the idea is that if you are looking at just about how you run your business, there are things that you can do that mean that you run your business with integrity and with full safeguarding. So you look after your staff well. You make sure you do no harm. But actually, what impact is exactly. It is not that. It is about intentionally doing something that actively benefits. So if we look at our plastic bottle recycler, they run their business very well, and they work actively with their local communities, but part of their actual remit of running their business is the intention of improving life for their communities by both removing waste plastic and also generating income for people. So it's very intentional. Impact is an intentional process. It's not a byproduct of your business. It's actually wrapped up into the real meaning of your business operation.
Deb, there was a question from Humphrey who said, do you have any financial risk and impact assessment templates one can use to find a compromise between the two? I just thought, Humphrey, Deb's actually done a huge amount of development for ICA. We keep a resource library, one element of which, of course, is a library of impact-related resources. And ICA has previously held it was an impact strategy development course, right, Deb?
Yeah.
But what Deb actually found in attempting to create a template is that something, what Deb has shown in the steps in these slides is the way that you can think about it. And it's actually almost, I think, Deb, would you say like a simple table like that is the best place to start, and adding the risk element to each one of your identified impacts, of course, as well, gives you that risk and risk mitigation angle. We don't necessarily have a template beyond what Deb has put together there, because what she found was as soon as you start to develop one, it's so individual.
Yeah, I did start trying to do exactly that. That if it was easy and you could just have a template and you could plug your information in, then the answers would tumble out at the end. But in the end, I found that it really wasn't possible to do that because there were so many individual things that were specific to a particular company. So what I've been working on is to try and develop an approach and a system, and you work through the system in exactly the way that I've shown you here. So with some very basic things that you need to think about and how you then put those individual elements together. But the idea of building in some sort of risk assessment into that is something that we haven't done yet, but I think is something that we could certainly look at, because we're upgrading and redeveloping these sort of resources all the time. And can I just introduce, if you haven't met her before, Tiffany, who was answering there, is actually my colleague. We work together at Impact Capital Africa. I'm currently freezing cold in the UK, wishing I was with you in Zambia today. And Tiffany is actually in Cape Town. But we work very much on an international basis. There was a very good question that came in from Njavwa.
I'm capturing them, Deb. So Njavwa said, which element do you think impact investors value more, return on capital or return on critical ESG factors?
Okay, so by ESG, we mean environmental, social, and governance issues, and impact runs alongside that as well. So are investors interested absolutely only in the bottom line, or are they interested in impact and the other aspects of your business where you're delivering a different type of return? Well, I think the answer to that is, and I'm going to quote you, it depends, because it will depend very much on the type of investor that you're talking to. Some, what I call pure investors, are only really looking to for a sort of a good return on their investment going forward, and therefore they will be very much more interested in return on capital. But impact investors who are looking for two types of outcome, and even ESG type investors, it will be a balance. But of course, it's impact investing. It's investing primarily. If you don't have a good business that can grow and generate those financial returns, then you can be as impactful as you like, but you're not going to actually have any impact because you haven't got a business. So for an impact investor, the two run hand in hand. But each impact investor will have a different balance that they're looking for. Some are more interested in the bottom line with some degree of impact involvement. Some are more forgiving if you can demonstrate very high levels of impact. So it will depend very much on the type of investor. But unless you have a successful growing business that can deliver a bottom line, can deliver a good return, then actually you can't deliver the impact either. So I don't see them as being mutually exclusive.
Deb, I was going to add a little bit onto that to round off the whole ICA team. There's been some questions on here around ESG and impact. I think it's important quickly just to differentiate between the two. ESG, environmental social governance, factors are things about your business that you do to be able to demonstrate a level of performance. So let's say we use the plastic bottle company as an example. That plastic bottle company would need to understand their impact through their operations on the environment. So let's say in the production of the recycling of plastic bottles, they create a highly toxic. Now, if they don't manage that effectively, that is a significant risk to their business, but it demonstrates that they don't have strong performance against the impacts that they create from an environmental perspective. The same is true for social and for governance. Now, impact investors are not just looking at how you manage your environmental social governance factors and how you can demonstrate a level of performance against those. They want to use ESG as a negative screen, so you have to reach a minimum level of performance. Then they look at the positive impacts that you deliberately create through your business, either through the products or the services that you generate. So that would then be, okay, so I'm looking about creating recycling plastic bottles, and I'm creating an affordable product from that for base of the pyramid households, let's say. I see Robert's asked a question around, is impact only about the environment? No, it covers environment and social. So impact investors would look at a deliberate environmental and or social impact that your business creates. But it's not the same as the ESG performance that your business can demonstrate. So there is an expectation that you will have contracts for your employees, that you will be a fair employer that pays minimum wage or above, that from a governance perspective, that you have the right board structure in place with contracts, that you would be up to date with the way that you actually record your finances and report them to the regulator. So you see there's a difference between your ESG performance, and I'd say investors, impact investors use that as a minimum screen, and then the impact is where you deliberately create a positive outcome for the environment or for society.
Okay, thanks, Emma. That's great. And for those of you who hadn't guessed, Emma is also another ICA colleague who you will have seen this morning on the video that we showed. So we've had, we've having lots of questions come in. Julius asked, when we talk about impact investors, do you have any who would invest in an equipment SME? There are impact investors who are interested in all sorts of sectors. Some specialize in certain sectors, some specialize in certain size of business, but across the piece, as long as your business can generate both a good financial return and impact, then there will be an impact investor out there who would be interested. So it's not something that is sector specific. And as the question just now was, is it always about the environment? No, absolutely not. In fact, a lot of the people that we worked with in previous years of Impact Capital Africa were working in the agriculture and agro-processing space, where the impact was very much about social impact, working with smallholder farmers to improve livelihoods, access to nutritious food, as well as things like access to finance. Again, we work across all sectors. ICA itself is not sector specific either.
Sorry, Deb, there was another question which from Sungweni, who said, you know, for a startup, what we're talking about is a lot of impact, there's a lot of requirement for development, and is it a necessary route? And I'd say, you know, it's obviously nobody's going to force you to seek any particular kind of investment. I think it's very important. And, you know, a lot of, there's another question that kind of says this, that asks the same kind of question, which is, conventional investors are looking for a return on investment. Impact investors are looking for a return on investment, as well as a social or environmental return. So there's that added level. And we realize, like, as a startup, it's a difficult thing to add to your repertoire, as it were. But, you know, if your business has a positive impact, and a lot of times this seems like a really big concept. You know, we've got businesses that we work with where you ask the question, okay, so who do you work with? And they say, we work with 50 unemployed women. And you go, well, that's great. You got an impact story. You're employing people. You're helping previously disadvantaged minority groups. You've got a gender lens. So these are often things that, you know, if people are benefiting, and it's not as simple as, well, I create jobs. But there are ways in which you can adapt your story and improve your impact spectrum. That said, for startups, you know, if you were choosing to pursue impact investment, it's something that you can begin to develop. I mean, Deb, you can weigh in here. I mean, it's something where if you were looking for that avenue, yes, you would need to start working on it. But if you were going to go with conventional investment, then it's something you should consider building into your repertoire, but it's not an essential component for your conventional investor.
Okay. We've also had a question from Ted, who asked, what literature do you have that we can further read about impact? It sounds like a whole new philosophy to doing business. Well, a good place to start is actually on the Impact Capital Africa website. We have a tab on the website which is called Knowledge, isn't it, Tiff? Okay, so it's called the Knowledge tab, and we're literally working on a whole bunch of resources now, and over the next couple of weeks they will all be being uploaded, and it takes you through the whole of the sort of impact investment raising process, and a lot of background information and pointers to some really good resources elsewhere. I've been, in particular, I'm looking at the moment at a really good document. It's on Sme Governance, so that's all about how a really good way, how you set up the right systems and the right structures within your business to meet the requirements of investment, inward investment. So there'll be lots of stuff like that actually on our website. And I see we've got lots more messages coming in. What's this one?
Sorry, so Trevor asks, how can I build risk mitigation into my exit strategy if we're not able to take the business to market listing?
That's actually that's a technical question, but it will be very specific to your business, and I think that's the sort of thing that we would need to take offline, and see exactly what it is you're trying to do.
I think some basic principles around that is, you know, have a look at the type of business that you're listing in, what you project the growth is going to be of that business, and see who you would anticipate, you know, future fundraising rounds to look like, what type of capital you'll be raising, and who may come in at those rounds. And there could be an opportunity, depending on how you've entered that business, to be able to potentially structure a way for your equity position to be purchased at subsequent equity raises. But as Deb says, it's very, very specific depending on the business that you're in. And when you say risk mitigation, if you're regarding impact ESG, or if you purely mean the risks involved with potential exits, where you've got very limited options from a listing perspective.
Sorry, was M coming and going for you guys too?
Yeah, Emma, your sound is bad.
Yeah, M, most of that was lost. It went very quiet.
Sorry.
Now you're silent.
I was just trying to say that yes, it is dependent on the business, but also dependent upon the landscape from a sector perspective, from the phase that you get involved. So I think it's worth maybe taking that offline and asking, and also obviously the focus of this is to talk about sort of ESG and impact. So was that the angle that you were thinking of? How do you manage the potential of, as a business grows and lists, the way that impact can potentially be diluted, or were you merely talking about the risk of limitations to exit strategy when listing may not be an option in the market that you're investing in? So I think maybe we could talk about it subsequent to this.
Okay. Just been, we've had a very interesting question about what ICA actually is in terms of an entity. The one thing that, and it's really important that this is clear, that Impact Capital Africa, we don't supply funds. We are not actually part of the fundraising deal at all. What we do is we are facilitators. So we help investors find companies that might be interesting for them to invest in, and we help companies in Zambia make links with appropriate investors to take conversations further on. So we're not a sort of a financial entity in our own right at all. We just use our networks to help people make the right connections. Okay, so, a very good question has just come in from Mafipe. Could Emma possibly be on an Airtel connection? Well, actually, I have to tell you, she's on a UK connection, which is supposed to be some of the best in the world, but clearly not today. Okay. Right, I think... have we got any more questions coming in? I think most of the other ones that I've seen have been answered. No, I can't see any others. So I go back to the question I asked earlier on. Has anybody present today actually started working on an impact story for their business? And if not, I mean, and you think you might need to go down that road, does it sound like it's something that you could do, or does it sound very sort of onerous and difficult? Have I made it any clearer?
Deborah, will you please just wrap it up, because you're only 1 minute away to the break.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're absolutely right. Okay, so thank you all very much for attending. I mean, I go back to what I said before in the clip. Just remember that impact is intentional. It has to result directly from your company's business operations. So that's really important if you're thinking about impact. The other thing is, don't get caught up in trying to think about too many examples of your impact. Concentrate on 1 or 2 key aspects and really work those into a very strong story. Okay, and then just make sure that you walk the talk and you do what you say you're going to. So if we have no more questions, I think we're just about at the end of our time and we're going to get kicked out. So if there's nothing else, we're closing in 55 seconds. So thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Deb.
If anybody wants the slide deck, just email me, which is in the chat, and I happily send them.